My mother always told the stories that when they were shooting late at night, you could hear the ghosts from the cemetery. It's the back lot of Paramount Studios. Everybody at Paramount knows that the cemetery is haunted. Perhaps it was my father who had such a painful ending. He felt that his lifespan really hadn't worked out that well. He really felt everything was going to be lost. All the films that he had made, all his work. He had the hope of making more films. He wanted to be here.
I'm not through with you by a long shot.
Edgar G. Ulmer interview, part 1.
It's a very, very sad life now. Strange, very strange.
Fate, or some mysterious force, can put the finger on you or me for no good reason at all.
They had no spirit. We had no spirit here.
Listen, mister, I've been around, and I know a wrong guy when I see one.
I have nothing against commercialism, but it cannot outweigh the creative urge. I really am looking for absolution for all the things I had to do for money's sake.
Remembers Ulmer. I do.
He was a wonderful director. Wonderful.
I can't believe that you're in love.
He was a very talented man who happened to have abilities in many areas.
I saw The Detour many years ago.
We're gonna get in, and very, very clever, clever man. I miss him.
He was bragging. How many films? 49.
You know, he was a genius.
He was a frustrated man.
Edgar was a sweetheart.
Was he really?
The king of Poverty Row.
Was Edgar Ulmer a king?
King of what?
If this were an Ulmer film, there would be operatic music.
Yeah,
thundering
maybe a
somewhere.
score.
There would definitely be music.
The public domain.
That's right. Crashing music. That's right. Mixing with the thunder and lightning. It would be something delirious.
Wind?
Wind.
Howling wolf? Barking dog?
Howling wolves and barking dogs are always good.
Oh, fog.
Fog. Oh, yes, absolutely fog. Fog is the B director's friend.
I don't see anything.
The term B-movie is really open to great misrepresentation. The original meaning of a B-movie was the second half of a double bill. During the Depression in the 1930s, in order to get more people to come to theaters, the theater owners gave them 2 pictures for the price of 1. And the major studios would have their A list of productions and their B list of productions. The A list were their big pictures. The B list were the supporting films. And today, I think a B movie is just generally thought of as an inexpensive movie.
B movies are the red-headed stepchildren of the cinema. They require a lot of forgiveness, a lot of special attention.
Yeah.
It's an art form in of itself.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't want a lobster. Sometimes you want a cheeseburger or a hot dog. And the
rough edges give it a lot of personality.
Yes, they do. The charm of a B movie is that it's human, that it has foibles, it has problems, it tries hard and fails. And I think a lot of people feel empathy for that. They feel empathy for the B movie. They can identify with the B movie. You know, this is their life. This is that person trying to succeed against insurmountable odds and all kinds of problems and sometimes not doing so well, but nevertheless, in there pitching and trying all the time. You know, as they frequently say, they give Oscars to the wrong directors. They should give them to the B directors because of the incredible challenges that they have to face. And how could you help but love your own movie when it finally was finished? You know, no wonder Ulmer felt that way about his films, because they all were red-headed stepchildren that he, that he had to raise. He could go in there and create. He could face all of these challenges. He could be this boy wonder of the Bs. And I think that's really why people are so fascinated by his work. You know, John Ford could go in and make a movie and have everything going for him. Stars, budget, script, everything.
Yep.
Edgar Ulmer, he had to take a rat and make Thanksgiving dinner out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Who can't make a movie with $40 million? The trick is doing it with 40,000.
And in 6 days.
Yeah.
This man was a control freak. Obsessed with Teutonic Boy Wonder, aesthete from the Alps. Ulmer probably wanted to be wanted, but I think if he had been wanted, he would have soon tired of being wanted.
You wrote that?
I don't think I made it up.
Geisterhaften Orten auftaucht. Man weiß nie, ist das jetzt wahr oder ist das Teil des Imaginären, seines eigenen Imaginären.
It just felt like a lot of people in my looking to make pictures, I think, and were inspired to make on the independent filmmakers, the people who didn't have a lot of money, who had to make do with little. That would be the biggest impact he'd have, because you see a picture and you say, you know, he made this for nothing. So maybe we can do it.
Filmmakers of my generation tend to be a little bit more film history oriented, because a lot of them came through film schools, but also, I mean, you learn certain things in film school, but you don't learn Ulmer.
Well, Edgar Ulmer has always fascinated me because he really worked on the fringes a lot. And I don't know if by choice or not, or I don't know, because a guy of his talent usually would be folded into the studio system. Edgar Ulmer was recognized by the French, by the New Wave guys, Truffaut. And
I'm sure Godard was certainly an Ulmer fan.
A lot of the French and New Wave filmmakers were very interested in the classic years of Hollywood. And I was following in that tradition. This idea of what the French called the politique des auteurs, that despite the often factory-like circumstances of making films in America, in Hollywood, that certain men had a personality that transcended the limitations of the studio system. I was interviewing directors in the 70s. So I interviewed him in his home in Los Angeles for about 3 different times we spoke.
I don't know. I'd like to talk to you about all your pictures, but it would take more than one afternoon, I think.
Jolly would.
Yeah.
I relive every second of my life, and I see it now like a spectator sees it.
Ich habe die Tour nochmal gestern Nacht angeguckt und gedacht, also ohne Hut mache ich das überhaupt nicht. Und dann habe ich den Hut nicht gefunden gestern Nacht. Und da war er zerknüllt in der Ecke. Ich musste ihn eben noch schwer ausbeulen. Und jetzt waren wir noch einmal um die Ecke rum und dann da hinten raus. Ich muss gestehen, ich habe den Ulmer erst Ende der 70er Jahre entdeckt im Pacific Film Archive in Berkeley. Nämlich als ich mich richtig zum ersten Mal mit dem Film Noir oder den B-Movies auseinandergesetzt habe.
You know, as a child, obviously, I was attracted to, you know, horror movies and genre movies of all kinds. And it turned out, of course, that Ulmer became a big name in that group of people.
well, I've only seen that I know of, I've seen maybe 7 or 8. Man from Planet X and The Black Cat, I saw the first time as a kid on television in America. He made a lot of movies that were made quickly, cheaply, grind movies, you know, sausage.
That's me. See, that's my mom. But I know my father took it. He tries to travel with the camera a bit. He's trying to make a little more out of it than just, you know, standing there. That's my first appearance in my father's films. I don't have any actual remembrance of this, none whatsoever. I guess my memory doesn't go that far back. Well, the first memory I have of him is on the set. They were making The Light Ahead, and I play a little girl in it. And I'm supposed to just walk across the set. And I remember my father behind the camera, trying to convince me to cross the stage. My life with my parents was basically on the set. If you wanted to see them, you really had to see them on the set. I adored my father like my mother did. I had been used to him, you know, being around even if I didn't see him. He was scary. He had a big booming voice. I think that made him sound strange.
Strange, very strange.
Ulmer was always a mystery. You know, he's one of those figures you're hard to put a finger on him. He's kind of a, you know, an enigma in a way, kind of a mystery to film history. And I think that that's what drew me to him. Okay. Edgar Ulmer. You have the record right here. Ethnicity, Austria Hebrew. And I love that it gives his birthplace as Wein, presumably Vienna.
Also eigentlich war ja so ein Wiener wie der Billy Wilder, ne? Der aus Sucha in Galizien stammt. Oder, wir noch andere finden, oder Paul Henreid, der aus der Rest stammt, zum Beispiel. Ne? Wer kommt schon aus Wien? Naja, wir zwei, wir sind so, wir. Drum sitzt man da wahrscheinlich.
Die Familie hat sich immer als Wiener Familie betrachtet, ja, aber geboren ist er de facto in Olmütz. Wobei er interessanterweise immer gesagt hat, ich bin in Wien geboren. Das schien ihm offensichtlich die glamourösere Variante.
I mean, even his age was a mystery. I mean, you will look in the old Academy books and they say he was born in 1900. They say he's born in 1902.
His life is riddled with ambivalence. Like Ulmer's own life story, the research trajectory takes you on a series of detours.
Now, he was a nomad from the very beginning.
I was in Berlin with Max Reinhardt in 1919. Yes, I was considered quite a kid at that time. You're very vicious kids, as you can imagine. I had done pictures in Europe and designed the sets for Caligari and the Golem, pictures like that. Metropolis, Nibelungen, Fritz Lang. I also worked later on with him on M, and I worked with Murnau. I was really built regisseur. At that time, there were two directors in each picture. The director for the dramatic action, and then the director for the picture itself, who established the camera angles, camera movements, etc. With Murnau, I invented production design.
Ulmer lernt 1920, 21 Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau kennen und es reift einfach in ihm der Plan, selbst Filme zu machen. Er will in irgendeiner Form entweder am Theater oder im Kino Karriere machen. Es ist ihm im Grunde egal. In seinen Jugendjahren ist es ihm egal, in welcher Form er reüssiert. Er will einfach Karriere machen und er will Karriere machen, indem er Geschichten erzählt, indem er Fiktionen erfindet.
Do you remember how the ideas came to move the cameras?
Yes. It was just before Last Laugh. It should be one shot. So Murnau turned to us and said, isn't there a way to do it? And we walked down the Kurfürstendamm to have dinner. A woman with twins in a baby buggy was rolling along with us. And I suddenly stopped and says, what's to put the camera in the buggy? And we tried and we built the first Dali.
Ich glaube schon, dass irgendjemand zum ersten Mal die Kamera in so einen Kinderwagen oder auf einen Rollstuhl getan hat.
I remember in his picture, The Black Cat, which was made in the early 1930s, he tracked through, I think it was Boris Karloff's mansion.
I came with Max Reinhardt with The Miracle in 1923 to New York.
Our next stop will be Ellis Island.
Ellis Island was the principal gateway for immigrants arriving to America between 1892 and 1954. During this time,
Case, it was often a combination of the two. America was a place that he certainly saw as a new home, and yet he never left Europe entirely.
Er war noch immer Pendler. Er war keiner, der gesagt hat, alles, was ich tue, soll in Hollywood passieren. Er war jemand, der europäische Kultur geliebt hat und vor allem die Hochkultur geliebt hat, die ja immer wieder seltsame Dissonanzen oder Reibungen auch in seine durchaus trivialen Filme in Amerika gebracht hat. Also ich glaube, dass er immer beides wollte. Er war ein Mensch, der von nichts genug kriegen konnte. Und dass er da auch immer wieder die europäische Filmkultur gesucht hat, scheint mir ganz legitim.
In many of Ulmer's pictures, you have these displaced figures. This wasteland, this destruction, this loss. You can see this ambivalence, like of the emigre who never could make kind of a final declaration of where his home was. Somebody was perhaps at home everywhere in the world, but then also nowhere in the world, fully at home.
No, I came home because Stroheim was making merry-go-round, and Stroheim wanted me as his art director. I became an assistant director with Willy Weiland, DeMille, with all that bunch out there.
Did you ever work with Lubitsch at all?
Oh, yes.
My dear mother, from a town between desert and Pacific Ocean, far away from European culture, with thanks and best wishes, Edgar, Hollywood, 1925.
During the 20s, he seemingly was both in Hollywood, assisting Murnau on Sunrise, later on Taboo, and yet he also managed to get back to work on People on Sunday. That places him again in Berlin.
What was your first feature?
In Sonntag. I organized that.
You designed People on Sunday?
No, co-directed.
Co-directed?
And produced.
With the...
Siodmak.
Siodmak was the other director.
Was the other director. Freddy Zinnemann was the cameraman assistant. Schuftan was the cameraman, the first time that he ever was in the camera. And Billy Wilder wrote the script on pieces of scratch paper in the Romanische Café. His first script.
Gut, das erzählen eigentlich alle Personen, die an dem Film beteiligt waren, dass sie den Film gemacht oder inspiriert oder angefangen oder was auch immer hätten.
Nicht zuletzt unser Freund Billy Wilder.
Was feststeht, ist, dass 1929 hier 5 junge Männer zusammengekommen sind, die für ganz, ganz wenig Geld versucht haben, etwas völlig Untypisches zu machen, nämlich ein semi-dokumentarisches Porträt einer Stadt und sozusagen der kleinen Leute in dieser Stadt und wie sie einen Sonntag verbringen, wie sie ihre Freizeit verbringen. Das ist auch der erste Film, in dem er tatsächlich eigene Ideen entwickeln kann, in dem er vergleichsweise unabhängig arbeiten kann.
Eine Sache, die nicht diesen industriellen Charakter hatte, wie das deutsche Kino dieser Zeit.
Und vor allem ein Blick auf die Wirklichkeit, die das deutsche Kino Ende der 20er Jahre nicht kannte.
Die Leute haben später Karriere gemacht und irgendwann ist man halt draufgekommen, es gibt hier einen gemeinsamen Anknüpfungspunkt.
Den Karriereschwung hat es für den Robert Siodmak gebracht, weil da wurde ein erfolgreicher Drehbuchautor. Ja.
Did you remain friendly with Siodmak?
Yes.
And what about Wilder? Are you friendly with him?
Billy,
Yeah.
yes.
You didn't make any more features in Germany, did you?
No, I came home.
You came here.
Hollywood, California. I really became aware of Edgar Ulmer, I think, through The Black Cat.
Well, The Black Cat is really a subversive movie. I mean, it's just, the implications of what's going on in The Black Cat are far beyond the Hayes office at the time.
Black Cat is so unrelentingly European, you know, and...
Creepy.
Creepy.
It stays with you.
Different.
Because there was just so much evil.
Literally.
Dr. Pentecost has arrived.
The Black Cat had a schedule of 15 days, and that's a major studio. That's Universal. And 15 days, $91,000 budget. I mean, for a studio of that size, that's just peanuts.
Well, how much was Frankenstein and Dracula?
Frankenstein was about 3 times as much, and Dracula was about 4 times as much.
Wow.
They give him a top hat and say, here, you know, pull a rabbit out of it and surprise us all with what you do.
Black Cat.
This is a very interesting house you have here, Pelzig. Has an atmosphere, kind of,
It is indeed hard to describe. As hard to describe as life or death.
One of the first times I saw The Black Cat was with a babysitter, twin babysitters. And they were both absolutely appalled. And I kept saying, I know your parents wouldn't want you to be watching this movie. This is a really nasty movie. And, oh, no, they won't mind. Well, they probably, I'm sure they would have minded. But they didn't happen to be home that night. So the babysitters were stuck seeing it. And they were very upset by it. But that's one of the things I always think about when I see the film. I think of those two twins sitting on the sofa, shaking their head.
Weitergegeben worden. Man hat sich den Namen zugeflüstert, wie in einer Geheimlogen oder in solchen Geheimbünden.
Black Cat premiered May 3rd, 1934 at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. Ulmer was not there. He had been fired. You have to wonder why. Was he self-destructive, that he kind of shot himself in the foot on purpose after he had made this great film rather than go on and try to continue this kind of success? Was the story true that
It was a terrific scandal that this little girl of, 20 years of age is going to run off with this foreign director. He found that he couldn't get any work here. I would say it influenced the rest of his career.
Being a mainstream Hollywood director in that sense, he was the outcast, and I think he felt comfortable playing that part.
But I mean, there is a thing called movie jail where you're suddenly off the list. You're no longer on the list of people they consider. You never really know why. You can't explain this happens because here's the movie police right here. See, they're after some poor director whose picture flopped. There they go.
It was a turning point. They went to New York, and he found the ethnic films to work on, films about different cultures.
I just can't help laughing to myself when I think of all the strange people who go to make it up. Like Manhattan. What a place.
The films that Ulmer made in and around New York City deal with this position of a minority figure in the metropolis, in the big city, in New York, and the dilemma that those cultures face.
The emergency in our economic life.
Not politics tonight, Bob.
All right, no politics.
And I don't feel like swing music either.
Okay, no swing then.
It was one of the most pitiful things I ever did. I had to make the picture in 4 days for very little money, and we made quite a good picture. What was later on called the Rossellini style. We didn't use actors, we used real people.
Die Filme dieser ethnischen Phase gehören sicher zum, unter Anführungszeichen, primitivsten, was Ulmer je gedreht hat, weil einfach die Bedingungen, unter denen sie entstanden sind, völlig ärmlich waren. Also es war wirklich eine arme Kunst. Genau das aber hat Ulmer immer dazu gebracht, seine besten Resultate zu erzielen. Genau diese Tatsache bringt ihn dazu, erfinderisch zu sein und auch lyrisch zu sein, interessanterweise.
I'm gonna have my own style and I'm gonna do it like I see it, dignified. Schwienefelder was made for $8,000 cash in 5 days shooting. We were so poor you have no idea. We had nothing but ambitions.
It's quite good.
It's very good.
Yeah, very good.
They always talk about this bleak worldview, and this nihilist worldview. But he made very funny, the Yiddish pictures he made, don't ask me what the title is, but there's one in particular that's still shown. That's quite funny. Greenfields. That's very funny and bright. And so it's not dark and nihilist all the time.
The experience of his migration to this country did a number of interesting things to his identity, especially the 4 Yiddish pictures that he did In a way, it was a kind of return to his roots. It was a return to a past that either he never really experienced himself or that he discovered here first.
Nicht genehmen, Sie mit ihm, aber wissen darf man. Was ist der Eile nicht? Was, Bisco? Man nimmt doch schon nach zu.
I didn't speak the language. I had to learn Yiddish from scratch. Because, believe it or not, I didn't even know I was a Jew.
You have to realize the time in which it happened, that he decided to stay in the States. And that was just the war that came up, Hitler. Because while he was in New York making Light Ahead, the world would change. And as a Jew, he was certainly not going back there.
And then I was given the title of the director of the minorities.
There, Ulmer really went against the grain. Ulmer wants to support the minority cause. Another way of understanding it is that this was work for hire, and he needed work.
The only way I could cross country was to thumb rides. For even after hawking everything, I only had enough money to eat. Money. You know what that is. It's the stuff you never have enough of. Little green things with George Washington's picture that men slave for, commit crimes for, die for. It's the stuff that has caused more trouble in the world than anything else we ever invented. Simply because there's too little of it.
Ulmer geht im August 1941 nach Hollywood, um dort großer Studiofilmemacher zu werden. Er will bei Paramount ein Remake des Blauen Engels von Sternberg drehen. Er will mit Veronica Lake The Blue Angel machen.
It's not much fun, believe me.
He thought that he could be more creative here at this moment.
Das Projekt zerschlägt sich gleich wieder nach ein paar Gesprächen und zurück bleibt wieder nur dieses ständige Gefühl des unverdienten Scheiterns. Die Welt erkennt nicht, welcher Genius da für sie gerne Filme machen möchte.
So in other words, when you started making pictures for PRC, it was luxury.
Oh my God, this was big time. I drifted into PRC and couldn't get out because I had so many pictures for them.
Oh, this is Poverty Row.
Yes, that's where PRC was. And then it became Ziv, I think. And now it's torn down and it's a supermarket, like so many things in Hollywood.
Aquarium shop. Pretty depressing, huh?
Well, Hollywood's a supermarket. You got a little roast western and you got a little diced horror movie. And Ulmer made one of everything.
These are the shops that have replaced the studio, which is a funny feeling for me. Well, Poverty Row was the whole area, this part of Hollywood, that is outside of the main studios of the city. And most of the B films and the westerns and the cheapies were shot in these areas. It's still not what you would call a luxury area, no. PRC was really on the bottom of the distribution list for B films. You know, second bill all the way. This is from the golden years, and on the right is my mother, Shirley, and she was the script supervisor. And then on the left is Dad. This is me on the set with Dad. My heart belongs to Daddy. Look how I'm admiring him. PRC was the best time of his life, as it turned out.
This was my home, and I could bring any idea immediately to the top echelon. I nearly was running the studio. It laid on my shoulders. But it was a nice family feeling, not too much interference. If it was interference, it was, we have no money.
All in all, I was a pretty lucky guy.
Mr. Paderewski, I presume. It's beautiful. You're going to make Carnegie Hall yet, Al?
Yeah, as a janitor. I'll make my debut in the basement.
I don't blame you for being bitter, darling, but you mustn't give up hope. Why, someday...
Yeah, someday. If I don't get arthritis first. In the meantime, let's blow this trap.
You were having fun over there at PRC.
Yes. I had to compromise to keep PRC in business. I was schizophrenic. One was box office, and the other one was trying to establish a style of decency. And I knew that nothing was impossible, because the picture had to be done quick and we couldn't jeopardize not a penny.
Natürlich ging es um ein funktionelles Kino. Ulmer war einerseits dafür der richtige Mann, andererseits genau der falsche Mann, weil er viel zu viel Ambition hatte, um bloß funktionelles Kino zu machen. Weil er immer versucht hat, auch in den Filmen bei PRC, größere, spannendere, irgendwie ausladendere und mit mehr Kultur gefüllte Filme zu machen.
A burning ambition, striving to paint something really worthwhile, something fine. I worked feverishly at the Beaux-Arts, never seeming to get anywhere. I had little money, barely enough for my paints.
Rubaiyat was a tremendously challenging picture.
Shot quickly?
Very quickly, 6 days.
That's where he really has the chance to make a mark with great alacrity and with just this amazing ability to adapt again, whether he's shooting a weepy, whether he's shooting a sort of psychological melodrama, whether it's a classic noir.
Look out, Jimmy, look out!
Shot quickly?
Because I was again 6 days.
Call the coroner's wagon, Swanson. She's dead.
Die B-Pictures bei PRC wurden viel später erst zu dem, was sie heute sind, zu leuchtenden Exemplaren einer bestimmten Gattung. Die galten damals als Wegwerffilme, als Billigfilme, die null Wert hatten. Ja? Also kein Mensch hat damals, als er die Tour gelesen hat, einen Klassiker gesehen, sondern im Grunde ein Armutszeugnis.
Would you call that movie, you know,
Detour.
Detour. Would you call that film noir?
Sure.
Because it's a destructive woman and...
Detour is only influenced by Ulmer's background and its nihilism. And I don't know that another director with a different background would have been able to bring out that darkness.
And was that deliberate, or was that because he didn't have money? I don't know. But he was very clever in telling stories.
It is a truly dark, nasty, twisted little movie that even today has its own grimy, want to take a shower feeling after you watch it.
Near the airport at Desert Center, I pulled up for water. There was a woman. Hey, you! Come on if you ride.
I was out on the road trying to hitch a ride. Women never hitchhiked rides. It was unheard of. Only the hobos did that, the men. I came in for makeup. I went to the hairdresser, and she gave me a lovely, nice, beautiful, clean hairdo. And then we all drove to Palmdale. Edgar came over to look at my makeup and my hairdo, and I looked too nice, and he said, "This will never do, because Anne has to look like Vera, which has to look like she just came off the dirtiest freight train."
Man, she looked as if she'd just been thrown off the crummiest freight train in the world.
And then he told the hairdresser, the hair has to go. Put some cold cream in her hair. And she took a handful of cold cream and just ran it right straight through my hair, which left my hair just stringy and looking very dirty and soiled.
Yet in spite of this, I got the impression of beauty. Not the beauty of a movie actress, mind you, or the beauty you dream about when you're with your wife, but a natural beauty. A beauty that's almost homely because it's so real.
I had never had a good part like that. I had played, the other woman in other films, and but never anything like Vera. She is mean to a certain extent. She wants to be boss. She was a real bitch.
Naja, das ist eine Wahnsinns, die ist 30 Jahre zu früh da gestanden. Aber sie bringt einen auch absolut um den Verstand. Und weil sich auch alles gefallen lässt, der blöde Hund.
You sap! You'll be fixed for the rest of your life as Charlie Haskell. You can take your inheritance and go away. No more worrying about the rent, no sweating, scheming, wondering where your next meal's coming from. Think about that, Roberts.
Vera, please, you're talking too loud. There's people around here. You don't know what you're talking about.
Es ist eine revolutionäre Frauenfigur und da kommen die Hälfte der Besetzungsideen von Tarantino her.
I often tell young actresses, if you can play Vera, you can play anything.
Aber das war eine große Lektion, dass das Billige und Dreckige und Unfertige und manchmal auch Wackelige und Fehlerhafte mitunter unvergleichlich dichter an die Wahrheit oder wie immer man das nennen will, also an Authentizität oder auch an das Sein rankommt als der Schein dieser Filmwelt.
The same thing, of course, the boy who played the leading character, Tom Neal, wound up in jail after he killed his wife. He did practically the same thing which he did in the picture.
Surely not with a telephone cord.
No.
I think it's one of the most memorable murders. A very grisly touch.
I don't like you, Roberts. You're no gentleman, see?
No, it isn't here.
Vera, open the door. Please open the door. Vera, open the door. Don't use the phone. Listen to me.
And she staggers into the bedroom with the phone, slamming the door after her. Now, at that point, they didn't write it in the script that she was supposed to tangle herself up. See, there's nothing in here.
Vera, let me in.
Edgar dreamed that up right then and there.
I'll break the phone.
And we shot it. And we never had any retakes, which was perfect.
How fast did you shoot that?
6 days.
Detour was done in 6 days.
Detour. A production number 493. June 14th, 1945 to June 29th. Camera days 14.
How fast did you shoot that?
6 days.
No, that's not true.
So what did he have? 7?
Well, we weren't wasting any time.
Well, it could be fraud too, as some of the other statements that we've encountered. I don't know how much I really, believe in budget verity. Very often studios build in other costs from other productions, create a bookkeeping to some extent.
Ich würde speziell beim Ulmer, der ja selber mystifiziert hat sein eigenes Leben und bei dessen eigenen Aussagen man nicht weiß, wie sehr man dem vertrauen kann, weil viele davon lassen sich gar nicht belegen durch andere Quellen, würde ich das zum Anlass nehmen, diese Eigeninteressen der Dinge und Zeitzeugen und Verwandten und Mitarbeiter hineinzunehmen als legitimen Teil der Ulmer Persona. Wenn man sich beschäftigt mit seinen Filmen, stößt man eigentlich auf ein Labyrinth, wo man an Mysterien gerät und wo man auch bereit werden muss, diese Seltsamkeiten, diese Illusions einzubauen.
But is it the same material that we used in our back-projected screens? No, this is not the same. The illusion we get in cinema is if that is happening at this moment, and they are observers of that moment. And they can lose themselves as observers by not being reminded that there's a camera there and there's a microphone over their heads and there's a wind machine blowing their hair and all the other things. Of course, if you had a shadow on the screen, you'd destroy the whole illusion, wouldn't you, huh? As I'm destroying the illusion now, This is strange illusion, yes. I don't see an image. Oh, yeah, I see a ghost of an image now of me walking on the treadmill. Uh-huh.
We were not only father and son, but friends.
The shock of his violent death still haunts my mind. My nights are troubled by strange dreams.
Eine Traumvision, von der Paul Cartwright dann im Nachhinein jeder erklärt, er spinnt ein bisschen. Das Schöne daran ist, dass nicht wie üblich im amerikanischen Film den irrationalen Träumenden durch die Vernünftigen das Visionäre ausgetrieben wird und sie somit als rationale Mitglieder der Gesellschaft geheilt werden, sondern dass umgekehrt Paul, der hier geträumt hat, die vernünftigen Menschen davon überzeugt, dass der Traum die eigentliche Wahrheit ist. Aus dem, was man am Anfang für einen Traum hält, für eine Strange Illusion, ist am Ende die Real Illusion geworden.
Here's a young man walking in a fog, kind of. You can't see what's in the background. It's dark night, and he's very upset, and he's calling for his mother. His mother's in terrible danger, and his father is driving a car toward a crash that's going to kill him, and he's getting all these plot things done on a very low budget. And he didn't have any kind of a set. You think he's walking along, all he's doing is walking on a treadmill, and the camera is stationary, and it looks like he's walking, and he's going out of his mind, and suddenly he wakes up. Now, he did that in 40 seconds of screen time and in 1 hour of shooting. And that's how Edgar could make interesting film with a very low budget.
Roger Corman once gave me some advice, which was, actually he gave it to everybody. He said, when you're shooting a picture, you should figure out how long it's going to take to make it great, how long it's going to take to make it just okay, and how long it's going to take to get an image, and then go for the image. And I think that in a lot of cases, that's what Ulmer had to do.
Compromise, it's constant compromise. Well, all filmmaking is constant compromise.
I mean, you've got to live. You know, you've got to eat, and you have to try to stay visible.
Working with low budgets, and I've worked with low budgets myself, I know you're very often faced with minimal sets, with little production value. And one of your tasks is, of course, to tell your story in an interesting way, and another is to try to make the film look a little bit bigger than it really is.
And we want it to be real spooky now. Not too much lighting because we don't want to see the background. We just want to have a feeling that something strange is happening to us. And it's the beginning of the picture now, and we have to grab that audience right now. So yeah, let that fog come in, that's fine. Your lighting's okay now, huh? All right. Okay, now, plate's running, is it? Now, we're gonna get in and turn on the radio. Are you ready with the lighting cue now? Here we go now, the radio's being turned on. Is that enough? That's fine, okay. Feels okay, good here now. Now we're driving along.
You have never seen such a piece of trash.
Too bright, okay. Is that better?
Have a viewpoint.
How's that?
I'm trying very hard. No.
Remember now, it's got to be scary.
No set of mine existed where one wall was not without paintings, without any, just a plain wall in gray. I shot my master's scene, but left for the last day. The close-ups, meaning they would play against that one flat blank wall.
And he'd put everybody in front of that neutral wall and shoot all the close-ups. Turn this way, turn that way, look up there. But you have to know the picture awfully well in your head in order to do that.
Because I was allowed 15,000 feet for a feature.
No more?
No more. 2 to 1.
2 to 1, so it could do two takes.
Nothing more.
2 to 1.
Well, I believe that.
I don't know how many directors in Hollywood could shoot 2 to 1 today.
He used the lack of material to help the bleakness of the tale.
Man denkt ja immer, man braucht unheimlich viel Geld, um Film zu machen. Und letzten Endes ist es so, dass je mehr man Geld hat, umso weniger kann man damit machen. Und eigentlich ist es in meiner eigenen Erfahrung immer segensreich gewesen, wenn ich nicht genug hatte, weil da musste man das, was einem gefehlt hat, mit der Kamera ausgleichen oder mit Ideen oder Abstrahierungen. Das ist manchmal mit das Schönste, was man im Kino machen kann, wenn man was sich nicht leisten kann, sondern wenn man das Bild erfinden muss.
I mean, some directors do work with a very strong personal style, which is identifiable from movie to movie. Others are chameleons. They just adapt to the subject matter at hand.
Well, but I think that's fine.
But he didn't have. He wasn't fortunate enough to be able to have the time, I don't think, to develop a signature style.
Hat sich ja vieles abschmecken müssen, was er wahrscheinlich mal gerne gemacht hätte. Deswegen mag ich die Filme auch so gerne, weil die so zu dem stehen, was er zur Verfügung hatte. Und da hat er ein Maximum draus gemacht.
Rear projection was about it. I mean, that was about the biggest special effect that there was at the time.
He always has something in front of the lens. He always has a corner piece. He's very clever at creating chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Now this is a more Ulmer shot here. This is the kind of shot you get in an Ulmer picture. You know, basically a blank background with somebody talking. Usually shot on the last day of shooting, so to fill in all the spaces he couldn't do the close-ups in. Think that guy's ever heard of Edgar Ulmer? That guy on the bus there?
I don't know.
PRC was disappearing. He landed up really hoping that he could move into the A film.
Well, aren't you worried about your reputation?
It's a small thing to worry about after that.
You better try to sleep.
Beautiful picture. It nearly got an Academy nomination, you know that?
Yeah, no.
It's the only picture where she ever had to act.
PRC amicably?
They got the money for a Strange Woman, not I. I got $250 a week, and they were collecting $1,500 a week.
He was very angry. He found out that on Strange Woman, they had sold him out for a much higher price, and they didn't give him any benefit of it. He went to New York to do Carnegie Hall, and he did Ruthless here. And both of them had big casts. He was getting decent budgets.
They fought me every step of it.
It was cut then?
After the main release, they cut.
Why?
I don't know. Hollywood ideas. It's one of my great passions, music. I wanted to do a documentary. I wanted the hall to speak and have the experience of the music, which they wouldn't let me do. I had to have that silly story where actors talk.
The one terrible truth about the film business is that it's a business. The people who are making the decisions are no longer filmmakers.
Yeah. I think anybody who pursues what they think of as their own movies is running a risk, because that's not what they sell here. They're not in business to make artistic statements, they're in business to make money.
Es ist schon eine reine Verwurstelungskultur, also eingeladen zu werden, einen Film dazu machen oder damals von einem Studiochef aufgefordert zu werden, einen Film zu machen. Aber vielleicht ist es auch nur wishful thinking von Seiten von Ulmer, aber wo er bestimmt mit Recht hat, ist, dass es in vieler Hinsicht für jemand, der einen kreativen Anspruch an sich selbst hat, das Kiss of Death ist, da einen Film angeboten zu bekommen.
Du holde Kunst, in wie viel grauen Stunden hat mich des Lebens wilder Kreis umstritt. Hast du mein Herz zu warme Lieben zunden, hat mich in eine bessere Welt entrückt. in eine bessere Welt entrückt.
And we see Edgar Ulmer's old friend, the fog.
Art is what somebody lives for, and you can define art a lot of ways. I'm sure Edgar thought of what he did as art, and that was rewarding to him. It was a film called The Man from Planet X, which is exactly what it feels like right now, because we shot in fog almost the whole picture. And a lot of the time, when you were looking at things, you were seeing only the things he wanted you to see. So he was able to be very selective about what he showed you, because there was no real set to speak of.
The thing he's holding, watch it. Don't move.
He doesn't take the idea and make a move for me.
The Man from Planet X actually has some of the tragic qualities of other Ulmer protagonists, like perhaps Tom Neal in Detour, in that he's come millions of miles through space on a peaceful mission and lands on Earth. So fate sticks out a leg to trip the Man from Planet X after millions of miles.
And the character is very much like Ulmer himself. He is an immigrant. He is desperately looking for acceptance. And here he is, finding himself in this hostile environment, trying to communicate, the same way Ulmer tried to communicate in all his films, and having mixed results.
It's like Ulmer coming to America.
Decided we're friendly natives.
Wenn man bedenkt, dass Ulmer, der ein Opernnarr war, der die Literatur in- und auswendig kannte, der mit Jedermann, Faust und Hamlet umgegangen ist, wie der dann in Hollywood landet, in den kleinsten und ärmlichsten Studios dieser Filmindustrie zu tun hat und sich einfach nichts scheißt und in solchen 70- oder 60-minütigen B-Filmen, Faust, Jedermann, Hamlet, Oper, Furtwängler, alles, was ihm da im Gepäck ist, einbaut, wo immer er kann.
Well, a European sensibility is, you know, a sensibility that understands classical music and that thinks about philosophy, that has a more artistic nature, that's more artistically inclined, that talks about culture and isn't afraid of it. I mean, that's a European quality. That isn't, you don't associate, not that Americans don't have it, but it's not something you immediately associate with the American temperament.
Die billige Art und Weise, in der er gearbeitet hat, die Trashigkeit, mit der er an das scheinbar herangegangen ist, die Freiheit und Frechheit, mit der er europäisches Kulturbildungsgut und Kolportagemuster zusammen gedacht hat, eignen sich ganz gut dafür, dass man zeigen kann, wie das Kino eigentlich nicht dem Muster der traditionellen Künste folgen muss.
Well, now that we've made contact, I'm going to tear out every secret you've got.
I overpowered the little creature at one time, but there's not much I would need him to show you. There really wasn't much. I had a beard at the time. Mm-hmm. I don't have that on.
Let me play the creature, maybe.
Well,
I'm sitting there and I'm the creature.
Yeah, all right. Okay? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I'm sitting here and
yeah.
I'm the creature now. I'm the man from Planet X.
Sit. Yeah, that's about the right height.
You come back.
Too bad. You won't get an argument from me about what the ranking should be. B minus, maybe? You might. In honor of Edgar, I would say it's a B film, and that he managed somehow, in spite of all of the strictures, the size of the stage, the fact that there was no outdoor shooting, he managed to make something artistic out of material that really wasn't. Yeah, I think so. O holde Kunst, in wie viel grauen Stunden. So maybe he was asking me to sing it, and I didn't know it. If you want to believe in magic.
I really am looking for absolution for all the things I had to do for money's sake.
If you had to decide between between the artistry and the money. Go for the money, because if you were wrong, you could survive. But if you were wrong and spent a lot of money for the artistry and you were still wrong, then they'd cut your throat and you'd never work again. A great picture is an accident, because we don't know that it's going to be a great picture, and neither did Edgar.
Es ist traurig zu sehen, wie seine Karriere in den 50er Jahren im Grunde im Sand verläuft. Die Dinge, die er doch realisiert in diesen Jahren, das sind ja nicht wenige, sind also erstmal in Europa Filme, ja, wo nach dem Krieg es einen Bedarf gibt, kompetente B-Regisseure aus Hollywood einzuladen, doch auch mal in Europa schnell was runterzukurbeln. Und so übernimmt er etliche Filme wie einen Piratenfilm, einen Haremsfilm, Babes in Bagdad, den Film Hannibal, auch ein wirklich schlechter Film, der ihm aber eben zeitweise einfach das Überleben sichert.
Lots of travel, trying to finance many productions that never came through. For every one that he made, there was 10 or 12 that fell through.
Yeah, I mean, the waiting was perhaps something that I think that you can see in Ulmer at various junctures in his life and his career, waiting for a break, hoping that there would either be a big triumph in either his overseas productions of the 50s and 60s, or even more so, hoping to be able to get that break in Hollywood. In the 40s, and then even while working in Europe, hoping to get that break to return, to get that contract, to get the deal. A deal that never came. Ulmer definitely did not strike it big in Hollywood. His career was already so checkered, and he had already earned a reputation for being this man who worked on the cheap. He had a stigma attached to him, and I don't think he was ever able to overcome that stigma.
I did not want to be ground up in the Hollywood hash machine.
Another hypothesis would suggest that he was incapable of bowing to the studio bosses of Hollywood, and instead continued to have this kind of rebellion against Hollywood. But also I think that hypothesis fails, because if you read the letters that he was writing in the 1950s, it's very clear that he wanted to get back to that Hollywood hash machine.
L.A.
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
You go, well, where is Hollywood? Hollywood, a conceit. It's in the mind. It's just Los Angeles County is Hollywood. You know, it's all over the place.
But Hollywood is nothing but a giant back projection.
Not Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't exist.
And it's out of focus.
Man leidet, wenn man da reinkommt, unter einem ungeheuren Realitätsverlust sehr schnell. Und die meisten Leute leben mit diesem Realitätsverlust ihr Leben lang und merken es gar nicht. Und einer wie Ulmer hat es vielleicht genau gemerkt. Also, und da ist dann genau der Schnittpunkt zwischen dem Wollen und Können. Also in diesem Zwiespalt hat Ulmer bestimmt tief gesteckt. Zwischen dem Wollen und Dürfen und Können sind die Grenzen ja ganz fließend. Und gleichzeitig hat ihn das Hollywood angezogen wie der Honig die Wespen. Oder wie sagt man? Die Scheiße, die fliegen.
It's 40 years ago. More.
Good night.
I think it was presented to me that this was a quirky director who is considered artistic, and he makes art films. He may have been that, or...
I don't know if he knew that this would be his last film. I don't think he ever thought that. But I know that he had great hopes for this film.
He had been trying to make this film for 15 years. He may have placed a great deal of hope and desire.
There was a lot of turmoil going on because I think there was a money shortage.
Edgar's position, I understood later, was that everything above a certain amount that was given to him would come out of his pocket. So he was in stress.
Good night. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
See, no.
Edgar had taken a number of sedatives, and he had awakened and could not see. This moment could likely have been a stroke.
His health was not good. He was not well. He had money problems. He had a time problem. When you think about it, I think anybody in good health would have had a stroke.
We were rehearsing a scene, and he backed away and he said, okay, all right, now, ready, action. And we said, action, wait a second, Edgar, the camera was still being set up, you know. He was a little bit out of it, more than a little bit.
Everybody else was complaining about the food, complaining about the weather, because it was cold, complaining about Edgar, complaining about the time, and
he began to get sort of cross and angry.
Well, it was not a happy set.
I think it was just because he was suffering so much frustration, and then to see it all begin to fall apart at the very beginning, I think that could provoke him to be kind of crack.
I think The Cavern's probably his most expensive film, and it certainly isn't one of his good films.
Looks like we're all turning crazy.
I presume so. Each in his own way. Say, Joe, do you ever get a hunch we'll never get out of this thing alive? I mean, do you lose hope?
No. I can't afford to.
No, I guess not. See you at tea time.
That's the Hollywood Cemetery. It's got lots of famous people in it, and it's sort of a tourist attraction.
Oh, the cemetery? You're not taking me to the cemetery.
There's a lot of celebrities in there. Yeah, it's. I don't think it has new people go in there.
It's special.
They have outings and they run movies, and you know.
No, I find that a little ghoulish.
For dead people who aren't really dead.
Yeah.
They live.
Such a painful ending. He no longer had the hope of making more films. In the last 5 years of his life, he was paralyzed and ill and hit by many strokes. But he said even out of a wheelchair, he was, get young people, and he was going to make a, production again. And I think he felt that the timing was off. He wasn't really going to go to the studios anymore. He didn't really want to get into television. And it was getting very hard to finance independent productions. When Dad was dying, he really didn't think anything was going to survive. All the films that he had made, all his work, be they 60 or 80 or whoever's counting, and what you're counting. He said, nothing is going to exist. Everything I did in my lifetime will disappear. And I said, Dad, it's not going to be that way. He says, there's no studio that takes care of those prints. There's no archive that has those prints. There's no reason for anything to survive. I was able to work for 7 years to get together the materials that didn't exist. that were just scattered all over the place under somebody's desk somewhere. So I think that my father's at peace finally.
Edgar at peace? No. There was a lot of guys that did wonderful films that nobody ever talks about, you know?
What do you mean?
Maybe he wanted to be remembered for doing great work.
You know, one thing, I can't remember Bob Fashion, but there was one thing that he did that made me suspect. He would say, somehow some subject would come up of a director. Oh, I worked with him. I thought, really? Oh, and I worked with, for example, Murnau.
Edgar?
He was dropping names, you know, at least for my taste.
Well, I mean, in the interview with Peter Bogdanovich, he claims to have been a part of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. He claims to have been a part of Paul Wegener's film of 1920, The Golem.
The Golem.
Claims to have played a role in Murnau's Last Laugh.
Last Laugh.
In fact, he claims to have invented the moving camera in The Last Laugh.
Dali.
Claims to have played a role in Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Metropolis.
And then claims to also have played an important role in Lang's M. There's no evidence of that, and the claims still speak to us, even, you know, from beyond the grave.
I don't know what the truth is. All I know is, you know, the work is there. I interviewed the people. They said what they said. If it doesn't always jibe, it's not my department.
Ulmer claimed to have been involved, I think, in a lot of pictures that would have given him a kind of cachet, kind of cultural capital that he needed as this emigre director, rather desperate to secure work. On his letterhead, you have Dr. Edgar G. Ulmer.
He was never a Dr. Phil. He would reinvent himself with each new situation.
We all exaggerate. We all color stories.
He was bragging.
That's the way we are. We're creative people.
It happened with such frequency.
I believed in these stories. Absolutely. Why would he lie?
Recognition and hope for even, maybe, who knows, an illusion about what he might have been able to achieve. Now, what is really frightening about life? Being betrayed, being ignored, being left behind, being so unimportant that your life to you seems unimportant.
He was a sad guy, and I think he was unhappy because he never attained the success that he hoped to attain. That was probably part of his frustration. He was a frustrated man. I'm sorry that Edgar wasn't more famous, because I think Within the Man was a great film. At least he was king of the bees.
There are a lot of king of the bees, you know. There's a lot of bees in that beehive.
Hey, listen, be a C player, a B player, an A player. If you're king of the B, C, or A, that's not bad.
Yes.
Some of the most talented people I know are not successful, and some of the most untalented people I know are very successful.
Vielleicht hat er wirklich sein ganzes Leben reingeträumt und auch nachträglich seine Vergangenheit in das Kino reingeträumt, wo er hätte dabei sein können. Ich meine, ich kann es gut nachvollziehen, dass man das trotzdem irgendwie mitlebt, dass man, was man nicht hat machen können.
Sometimes people may live more in their art than they did in their real lives. But the trick is not to be forgotten and not to have your artwork taken out of public circulation so that people can't see it. That's death.
Do you ever see the John Ford, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance? And remember at the end when Edmund O'Brien says, "Print the legend," because it was a better story. And I thought, I thought it was the right decision.
I don't know if there was a red thread in his life. I don't know if it had any conclusion. In order to tell a coherent story, you have to invent some things, and you certainly create illusion. The red thread with Mr. Ulmer would have to be his commitment to his work. He wished to be all over the place, part of everything that was going on at that time. He didn't know how to pace himself. He wanted to be everything at all times.
Your one you know. I'm on your mind each place you go. I can't believe that you